Gotcha. So okay, so what does your writing day look like? Because you say you gotta put the book first,
Yep.
and make if there's no book, there's nothing to talk about. So you got to make sure you get that done. So how do you divide your day up? And are you working a day job still at this point, or have you ascended to a day jobless level?
Well, every day I'm working, so I don't have an office job anymore. I have so many jobs. I like to say I'm a gig worker. So I have a lot of gigs. And I think this is something, especially that new writers trying to be authors, it's good for them to hear that, I don't know, I think, they probably hear the same things I heard coming up the ranks, oh, it takes 10 years to establish yourself as an author. It takes so many hours before, you can craft a book and all of that. And sometimes that's true and sometimes it's not, but I think it definitely took me a few years to get to where I am. So my day right now is I work for myself, basically. I'm self-employed. I have an LLC and I do freelance work. So I do social media for some clients. I do that. So that's part of my day, but I actually do start out working on my book. So right now I actually have 4 finished books that I need to revise. They're in different stages. I have 1 I've drafted that needs to be finished. So I have 2 right now that I want to get to my agent within the next couple months if I can. So I get up in the morning. I'm usually up at 5 and I do my social media work for my clients. Then I revise or write. Then I may have some marketing to do, like right now with Unicorn Island coming out February 9th. I have podcasts to do. I have other interviews, interviews that I have to write questions or answers to for the questions. I have school visit things that are coming in. So I'm booking those and I'm doing some of those as well with Zoom. And so, yeah, so there's some marketing that I have to do. I may have a Zoom call with my critique partner to go over issues and to brainstorm. I may have edits that I have to do for a book, like final edits, like a look through. My editor said, hey, can you take one more look at this before it goes to print, kind of thing. Then I'm also working on my online courses. I'm doing a webinar in April, and I'm taking one of my courses and I'm making that into the webinar. So I have to create the PowerPoint and the script and all of that and get ready for that. Yeah, so it's a busy day. And when you work for yourself, there are no weekends. Unless you make them. My husband also is self-employed, so he works at home downstairs. And some days we're like, we got to get out of here. Let's just go biking or, go drive around or do something. So it's hard to stop working at the end of the day. But, I just banged the table. But there's one book I want to recommend for writers that I found a couple years ago, and I think will help with getting that writing done and putting it first. It's called Deep Work by Cal Newport. And he's got several books out, but this really helped me get back to writing and be very productive, where you learn the techniques to shut everything off, focus on the deep work. This is what Teddy Roosevelt did when he was president, and he was writing dozens of books and he was traveling all over the world on expeditions. He knew how to do this deep work method. So I highly recommend that book for writers, because since I got into it, I've really exploded with my productivity. I've done 3 work for hire novels. One I wrote in a month last fall, a full-length novel that was really intense. But I got it done because I already had practice into place, like Unicorn Island, short book. I mean, it's an illustrated book. And I just want to show too, this illustrator, Bethany Stancliffe, her illustrations are so amazing. It's so atmospheric. And she just did a wonderful job with the illustrations in that book. But I wrote this book in 5 days. I sequestered myself at the Highlights Foundation, which is like my home away from home, in a cabin. And I wrote that in 5 days. I wrote book 2 in 5 days, which is coming out this spring on the Epic platform in hardcover next year. And yeah, so
5 days. What does that look like? Is it just you don't eat, you don't sleep? It's just type.
I literally run away. I tell my husband I have to run away to my cabin in the woods. He's great. He's really understanding. It's great. My son is 18 now because he's like, okay, see you later, Mom. But yeah, and I love it. I immerse myself in the story, and it reminds me of what it was like to write my first book when I wasn't on social media and I didn't know any other writers. All I had was myself and my story, and it was like this amazing, beautiful universe that nobody else was in, right? I mean, it was like I wasn't even here. So it helps me get back to that again, which I love. You know, I have to set aside the time. I tell students in my school visits the same thing. You know, we have to stop procrastinating. We have to get our homework done and our tours done. And we have to get our writing done if we're going to be authors, and set aside time to do it, whatever you have to do. So yeah, often I will do that. I think last year I went to highlights 3 or 4 times because I had 2 or 3 books that I had to get done on deadline. So.
Okay, when you're not in the cabin, how do you know you've had a productive day before you start your social media campaign and everything else that you have going on in your freelance work? And then what does that look like versus a cabin day?
Okay, so like a regular day at home here in my office. Well, I always set my schedule the night before. So I'm old school. I actually have a big calendar book. And so I set 30-minute increments for the next day. So I know I'm going to work on this for an hour, and then I'm going to work on this for half an hour, and this for 2 hours. You know, I do it in block increments in pencil so that I can be flexible and change it if I have to. And then at the end of the day, I go and I check to make sure I've done these things. It feels like a sense of accomplishment, and I set my schedule for the next day. So that's really what I live by.
Well, what happens if, I don't know, you're having an afternoon and, there's some big news story, which it seems to be happening a lot here in 2021,
right?
That maybe would distract you, or you're just having a blah day because quarantine's got you down and you don't feel like it. How do you power through that? Or do you?
It happens. Yeah. Well, I have my go-to people. So my critique partner and I really help each other power through. Because there's so many ups and downs in this publishing industry, and especially now, the industry is really taking a hit. So, we have things on submission, and it's a really tough time now because editors are being let go. Powerhouses are buying up other houses, and things like that. So it's a tough time to try and get book deals, in some respect. So I have my critique partner that I go to. I go for a walk. Like, I'm a real nature lover, and I go in the woods every day. I schedule in my walks, my meditation. I do transcendental meditation, which really helps keep me very peaceful and calm, and I don't let those things go. So sometimes I do 3-hour walks. I go off in the woods. I have my secret woods. I won't tell you where they are because there's nobody else there but me. I have my big walking stick, and I love it. It's meadows and woods and streams, and that's where I get all my book ideas. That's where I unwind. It's really important I don't let that go, because I do know some writers who are just working themselves to the bone. They're working 14, 16 hours a day. But I think it's just as important to have that, that time in nature, that peace, that meditation. It's just as important as your writing. So even if you don't get that extra 2,000 words written that day, there's always tomorrow. As long as you keep trucking along. That's what I tell myself. I've learned, and it's taken a long time to get here, I'm like my own worst enemy. And I think so many writers were like that. We whip ourselves, right? We throw the whip at ourselves because we don't work this hard and we're not getting this done, even though we may be working a full-time job or multiple jobs. So as long as you get some done every day, and every day you set a goal and you work on it, you're still moving forward, right? 500 words a day, 2,000 words a day, you're going to get the job done over time. So yeah, I try not to be too hard on myself. There's always tomorrow. And sometimes family or friends in crisis is more important. We're not just here in our little silos and our isolation writing our words. We also have to be part of the world. So take it easy on yourself.
Except when you're at the cabin. So what does a cabin day look like? And also, by the way, if you're taking 3-hour walks in the woods and you're staying in a cabin by yourself for 5 days, does it not concern you that you are setting yourself up for alien abduction?
Well, no, I used to be afraid of that as a kid. That was a serious thing, because as a kid, I always had, to get off topic here, but kids, we get bumps, right? We get like injury cysts and all that. So every time I would get one, I would think, oh my gosh, they took me last night. This new bump, it's an implant in my skin, right? It's no wonder my first book has an alien in it, right? A good alien and a bad alien. But yeah, so my time in the woods, it's funny, I get this all the time. Friends and family are like, they're like, you're the one person I know who just goes off in the wild by yourself. Like, aren't you afraid? I'm like, well, no. I mean, yes, in northern Pennsylvania, there are black bears up there, but like only one person has been killed in 100 years, and that was near New Jersey. So I'm not going to worry about
know of. There could be people just wandering off all the time that.
Well, last fall I went, and it was so great at the Highlights Foundation, which is an amazing place to go write, especially if you're a children's book author. It's the Highlights magazine. So this goes back to the 1930s. They have the foundation up in northern Pennsylvania near Millenville, I think it's called. It's in Boyd's Mill. They have 20 cabins. You have they're awesome. So comfy, your own bathroom. They feed you these amazing gourmet farm to table meals. They have big lodges you can hang out in. They have 1,500 acres to wander. And it's so amazing. So I went there last fall after I did that marathon book in a month for 5 days, and I didn't write. I walked in the woods for 5 hours every day. I went for a walk in the morning and a walk in the afternoon, and I read. I totally decompressed. It was awesome. Although there are bears up there, because I ran into big piles of bear scat, and I thought, gee, I better get out of here.
You don't want to be part of it.
No.